All right, thanks everyone. So over the past, I'd say maybe 6 months to a year or longer, ETR has been putting a lot more emphasis on improving our client presentations. So making sure we're using the right words, and maybe James has sent you his article about the weasel words, if you've been a recipient of that, and also just building better relationships with our clients. So I wanted to put together a presentation that sort of went beyond just those basic tips of how to give a presentation, like that Mike Monteiro article, the 13 mistakes designers do in presentations, which I can happily share with everyone if they haven't read that yet. It's a really great article. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about the emotional side of presentations and the part that's more about connecting and building relationships and confidence. So first of all, so EQ. So what is EQ? EQ is your emotional quotient. So it's the awareness you have of the emotions that guide your thinking and actions. So there's been, I'm sure a lot of you have heard this term a lot and a lot more lately. There's actually been a lot of research that shows that EQ is actually a better indicator of success than your IQ. So it's your soft skills over your hard skills. And a lot of people, HR departments, people are interviewing and really wanting to get a sense of the person and their EQ almost more than just the hard skills that you can clearly see on paper. So the qualities that make up EQ, there's just a few of them here. So self-awareness, so basically your ability to understand your effect on others. Self-management, being able to control your impulses. Motivation, so having an innate passion to challenge yourself. Empathy, so trying to understand other people's point of view. And social communication, so your ability to manage relationships and productively express your emotions. So I put together 5 tips on how to bring more EQ into your presentations. And these are things that I have done for literally years, like going back to graduate school. I never put them together in this context, but as I started building this deck, I realized that there's a lot of these things that I'm doing, and some of them I've maybe even shared with others. So these are things that I actively do and work on all the time. So the goal here is really to help you build more confidence, create better connections and trust when you're giving presentations. So the first one is convey your idea. So when you go into a room, be passionate and human. So this idea of convey your idea is sort of the TED Talk secret success to a great presentation. So they actually have a presentation about how they teach people to give good TED Talks. And this is the key thing, conveying your idea. So every time you give a presentation, there's an idea behind everything that you're sharing. And your job is to get that idea into the brains of the people that are listening. So you want to give them a reason to care about what you're saying and getting them excited. And you do that by, building your idea with concepts. So an example is like, think about when you're giving a logo presentation. You want to bring the client or whomever you're sharing it with into all of those choices that you made. So you're inevitably really excited about a certain tone that you captured, or you're really excited about some aha moment, in the white space or something like that. And that's the passion that you really want to come across to the client. You can let them know, I am so excited about this. So think about like when you might share that logo concept with your colleagues, you probably use, more relaxed colloquial language with your colleagues, like, oh, that looks sick. And that just is like so beautiful. And it makes me so excited. That's the kind of passion and excitement that comes across when you're really truly conveying your idea that you can absolutely and should absolutely share with clients. So it's like shedding that expert persona and feeling like you have to use all these really stodgy design terms and just being really, really human about it and sort of naming your ideas. It's going to really make them excited and bring them much more into buying this idea that you have for them. So the next one is radiating and receiving. And I know this probably feels a little like out there, but I think it's going to make a lot of sense when I explain it. So it's essentially no passivity, no scripts, sending out and taking in. So where does the concept of radiating and receiving come from. So most of you know that my husband is an actor. So I enjoy learning a lot of the sort of acting techniques that he teaches and studies because they equate so much to presenting and communication, you know, obviously. So radiating and receiving is basically active listening. So to radiate is to give and send out, and then you in return receive the person and atmosphere. So if you think about like when you're having a conversation with a friend, just like on the couch, you know, you are taking in everything they say, you're taking in the energy of the room, read the room, that kind of idea. So that's receiving. And then you respond appropriate, you radiate. So in acting, they use this technique to help actors get out of their head and away from the script and just thinking about their next line, which completely takes them out of the room. They're not reacting real to the person that's next to them and making it feel like a real circumstance. So it's the same notion when giving presentations. So Blair Enns, which is the other guy in Two Bobs, along with David C. Baker, that podcast. So he describes it like this: if you're reading from a script, you're not receiving. So follow a framework, something that gives you direction. So this is going into the notion, if you're getting into a presentation, you want to kind of have some like guide points along the way to help you get through. And those are just like a framework. It's not this hard script that you're going to feel like you're reading from, that again is going to take away from you feeling or appearing human. So it just comes from a place of listening and making the client feel heard. So you want to go into the room prepared to have a conversation, not a one-way conversation where you're just talking at them. And then the consequences, if the client asks you something or has some feedback that derails from your script, you're going to feel lost or worried, like you don't know what to say. So it's okay to say, that's a cool idea, let me think about it. That sort of tracks back to this. We talk about this a lot, and Melissa actually brought it up the other day in our design meeting, this notion of you said, we heard. So we've actually been bringing that in to a lot of our presentations, like follow-up presentations after we receive some feedback, where we can clearly say, so we heard you say this, and so this is how we reacted. You said this is what we heard, and then that makes them feel really heard. It makes it feel like more of a conversation, not just us presenting things to them and being sort of a wall on the other side. Okay, so the next one is write it out. So this probably feels a little contradictory. So this is not about creating a script that you feel like you have to memorize before you're talking. So this is just practice and knowing your idea. Again, getting back to conveying your idea. So I have literally been doing this for years, like probably since grad school. Anytime I have a big presentation or if I've gone into job interviews, I literally write out every single, the mock questions or just different ideas. And what this essentially does is it helps you capture all those ideas that you want to get across, all those key words and phrases that you want to say. And it's going to prevent the ums, the ahs, like all the just continuously rambling, searching for the right words and getting tripped up. So it just helps you feel more confident because you know what you want to say, and you're going to not be upset with yourself for forgetting to make a certain point or not conveying, that really important idea. So one of the things, so you're not feeling this sense of like you have to write an essay before every presentation, is I write notes to myself, and I'm sure a lot of you do this. I write notes to myself while I'm doing a design process. If I think of a cool phrase or some keywords that are kind of driving my idea, I just write that stuff down. And then when I go to prepare for the presentation, if it's something that I think is a big presentation that maybe I'm really nervous about, then I go through and I write all that out to make sure I'm hitting on those key points. And another way to practice this is like come to an ATR open studio and do a mock presentation. Karen did one of these when she had to do some user testing, and she ran through it a few times. And I know, and maybe she can validate, I know it helped her get through like all those little tripped up moments where you're not quite sure maybe how you want to set it up or what you want to say. It just helps you work through that stuff and kind of get your language down. So you're just a little more comfortable and relaxed in the room. Okay, so the next one is power posing. So sitting up, making eye contact, and smiling. So this comes from Amy Cuddy. She wrote about this in her book, Presence, and she has a TED Talk which is the second most watched of all time. So if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. So I think this isn't probably new knowledge that your physical self largely affects, you know, your mental self, that mind-body connection. So Amy Cuddy sort of took it a little bit further in that not only does having confident posture, which is sort of like sitting up, you know, looking straight ahead, not only does it make you feel confident, it can actually increase your testosterone and decrease cortisol. So it can actually, you know, literally have an internal effect on your hormones. And she did get a lot of criticism, which maybe some of you heard. People were trying to debunk it, but she did go back and repeated all of her research and studies, and she was able to refute any of that sort of like counterpoints and prove that her science was correct. So I think that we all try this, and it's probably even more important in this new virtual world, because you don't have the opportunity to stand up in the room, to walk around, to like point at the screen and use body language. I think when you're doing video, it's sort of all the more important to sit up, shoulders back, eye contact, you know, make sure you're like in the right frame. And just, if you're really nervous, I literally do that before meetings. Like I literally do the power posing and stand up and sort of shake off any nerves. It really, really does help. And it goes a long way in, you know, shoulders back, that kind of thing, and making you feel confident in what you're saying. And then the last one is period silence. So knowing when to complete your thought and stop talking. So this is another one that, in addition to writing it out, and these all work together, as I'm sure you can pick up on. I have been doing this for a long time because this has always been a big problem for me. And I started this notion of knowing when to put a period at the end of your sentence, because it may be like early on when I was giving presentations or doing an interview or something, you just keep talking and you keep filling the silence with your voice. And maybe you're repeating the same point, like you're telling the client the same design thought 3 times, maybe in 3 different ways, or maybe not. I'm sure we've all sat in presentations where this is happening and you just want to tell the person to like, oh my God, stop talking. So that just comes from nerves. That comes from not being prepared, not having written it out, not having known what those 2 or 3 just main points were that you wanted to make, and then know when you've made them and stop talking. And use that silence in the presentation to let your point land, to let the client absorb it, and to not ramble. So it can be really, really powerful. It's kind of like the white space in design. And I think the other really positive thing about knowing when to shut yourself off is you avoid that urge to say things like, so what do you think? You know, or do you like it? You know, or just like some of those, you know, kind of lines and words that we don't want to say in presentations that you might find yourself rambly getting to out of nerves and awkwardness. So say your thought, stop talking. That's it.